Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government.
In 1964, Jerry Santoro of Connecticut died trying to obtain an illegal abortion. This caused major talk about abortion. In the 1960s, abortion had gone from being a whisper in private to a topic for heated argument, but it was Roe that would transform that issue into a political force that has only grown since. The reaction to Roe was immense, but not immediately so. It took months and years for the anti-abortion movement to fully form, to organize and gain political power, first in the state legislatures and then in Congress. Chief Justice Warren Burger had reportedly held back the Roe release to avoid distracting from the week's inaugural festivities as President Nixon began his second term. Still, Burger did not expect the decision to be all that disruptive or have consequences predicted by the dissenting justices. Plainly, he wrote in his own concurrence with the January 22nd decision, "The court today rejects any claim that the Constitution requires abortion on demand." Nixon's chief of staff did not mention the ruling in his diary for January 22nd, distracted by preparations for Vietnam peace deal announcement and the news that former President Lyndon Johnson had died that same day. Johnson's death was the dominating headline story in the New York Times the next day, with a double-deck headline across the 8-column format and a formal portrait. Roe was a second lead in the lesser type.
In 2 related cases and 8 separate opinions, the 9 justices made abortion largely a private matter and ordered the states to make no laws forbidding it, except possibly during the final months. The court split 7-2, with Justices Byron White and William Rehnquist dissenting. In effect, the court makes abortion subject only to the decision of the pregnant woman's doctor. It ruled that states may make no laws restricting a doctor's right to decide his patient needs an abortion and to carry out that abortion during the first 3 months of a pregnancy. After that comparatively safe 3-month period, abortions may be regulated, but not prohibited by state law and for the benefit of the mother's health alone. Abortion is somewhat more dangerous at this stage, and states may insist, for example, that they be performed in regulated hospitals. Only in the final stages of pregnancy may states intervene and say no to abortion. The court's decision, written by Justice Blackmun, thus sets limits on the right to abortion on demand. One limit is the time when doctors believe the fetus may be able to survive outside the mother's womb. At that point, usually in the 7th month of pregnancy, the state may take legal action to protect the unborn child, even forbidding abortion except to protect the mother. The newly liberalized abortion law brought immediate reaction.
Nixon had brought up the decision in a chat with aides that evening, captured by an automatic taping system but without much heat. On the tape, he can be heard to say, "There are times when abortions are necessary. I know that, between a black and a white." When an aide added, "or rape," Nixon agreed, "or rape. You know what I mean. There are times."
There are times when abortions are necessary. I know that. That's cool. You have a black and a white.
In an early sign of its rising power, the anti-abortion movement amassed votes in both parties and Congress to approve the Hyde Amendment, banning the use of federal funding for abortions. Hyde has been renewed ever since, despite the efforts under Democratic majorities to repeal it. Reagan's re-election platform 1984 had the strongest anti-abortion plank to date, and that posture has remained in place since. On the other hand, Bill Clinton had success with saying abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Donald Trump, as a former Democrat known for being supportive of abortion rights, he seemed an unlikely champion for anti-Roe activists. But he was able to convince many, if not all, that his conversion on the issue was genuine. Unlike others, Trump continued to accentuate the issue in the fall campaign, describing the abortion procedure in lurid terms and saying a woman who had abortions should face some sort of punishment. Democrats, for their part, have doubled down repeatedly on the side of abortion rights, linking them to their support of human rights and groups whose rights have been long suppressed: African Americans and other minorities groups, women seeking to vote and enjoy full property rights, LGBTQ people, and immigrants.
New York is known for having the highest numbers of legal abortion. But also in New York, Catholics accounted for the vast majority of the pro-life movement's activists. There was more religious diversity than the media often acknowledged, partly because Catholic had joined forces with Orthodox Jews. The Right to Life movement had faced nearly insuperable challenges in the late 1960s, when a wave of 16 states legalized at some forms of abortion within a 3-year period. 1971. 25 states considered abortion legalization bills. Every one of them failed to pass. 1972. The pro-life movement went on the offensive and began campaigning for measures to rescind recently passed abortion legalization laws and tighten existing abortion restrictions. In the wake of the Central Park protest, the New York State Legislature voted to repeal New York's liberal abortion law and was thwarted by only Governor Rockefeller's veto. How did a small beleaguered Catholic movement manage to create a massive ecumenical coalition of grassroots activists and stop the march of abortion legalization? If the opponents of abortion had based their opposition merely on religious teaching or the seemingly arcane principles of natural law, as Catholics had when campaigning against contraception, it is unlikely that the pro-life cause could have withstood the forces of sexual revolution, the feminist movement, and the social changes of the 1960s. But because the pro-life movement grounded its arguments in the language of human value and constitutional rights, it was able to attract a politically and religiously diverse coalition that actually gained strength over time.
A lot of people didn't know that I existed, that she was able to have the abortion.
Shelley Lynn Thornton was 2.5 years old, completely oblivious to her role in history on January 22, 1973, when the landmark case Roe V Wade was decided in the Supreme Court.
When you are able to really think about the idea that your mere conception brought about arguably the most controversial Supreme Court ruling in history, what's the impact on you now?
I understand that it has nothing to do with me. It doesn't revolve around me. I wasn't the one who created this law. I'm not the one who created this movement.
Her only involvement? She just happened to be at the center of an unwanted pregnancy her mother wanted to end. As much as this case was personal, seemingly pitting a mother against her unborn child, publicly it pitted Americans against each other. The country was deadlocked in a bitter moral battle over what constituted life.
Is there any part of you that has ever given any thought to, boy, I'm kind of glad that law went into effect after I was born?
I just don't think about it. To me, I want it to be a non-issue, so I ignore it, thinking that if I ignore it long enough and hard enough, it'll go away, but it never does.
And so, at 51 years old, after decades shrouded in secrecy, the woman who was thought of only as the Roe baby is ready to tell her story.
Now you're confronting it, really.
I've ignored it for this many years and it hasn't gone away, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's now the only thing that I can do is just to meet it head on.
Baby Roe, interviewed by ABC News, spoke about her undecided views about abortion. She was adopted after her mother, Jane Roe, gave her up. She explained how the media always wanted to know her opinion, but she didn't have one. Roe's mother, Jane Roe, was drawn in by the media and often switched sides, back and forth from pro-choice to pro-life. She said she felt like the big fish. Baby Roe never went to see her biological mother because she felt like her mother could have handled it better, and she didn't feel like she owed it to her.
Official abortion laws did not appear on the books in the United States until 1821, and abortion before quickening did not become illegal until the 1860s. If a woman living in New England in the 17th or 18th centuries wanted an abortion, no legal, social, or religious force would have stopped her. Trusted midwives and medical practitioners performed abortions from the beginning of American colonial life and throughout the world history.
Some conservative lawmakers wasted no time signaling they were looking into restricting or banning certain types of emergency contraception, such as Plan B and other morning after pills that can be used within 72 hours of intercourse to prevent pregnancy. A leading Republican state legislator in Idaho suggested last week that he would be open to holding hearings on banning emergency birth control, and Senator Marsha Blackburn, R10, recently denounced Griswold v. Connecticut, the 1965 case that expanded access to contraception to unmarried people. Contraception methods like Plan B and certain types of intrauterine devices, or IUDs, could be restricted under the bill, said Catherine Cohen, a scholar of law and policy at the UCLA Law Center. The treatment for an ectopic pregnancy is abortion. The treatment for a septic uterus is abortion. The treatment for a miscarriage that your body won't release is abortion. If you can't get those abortions, you die. So, whether or not you choose to have an abortion is completely your choice. But my opinion is don't take the option away from women who want it and deserve it.